So you got that last part. That's so good. And the key thing to keep doing is to being righteous and understanding what that is. Because righteousness is not all about it being easy or pleasant at all times. You know, there are going to be times when we have to surrender a bit of ourselves for the sake of that which we need to do in righteousness, and it's not going to be comfortable at times. And it is where we learn and grow during that period. That's righteousness. And we must also go into the next topic now. Be careful in understanding really what's going on around us. Because the damned, the reprobates are being cleaned out right now, being removed from my whole creations. And firstly, we must not exert any more efforts expecting good things from them. We should understand by this time, during this phase of process of my divine creations, they are never going to change anymore. And even if they try to appear so, it would be con artistry. But there are a few, just 9 to 10 living spirits of women. I'm currently working proactively under the conversion project of the Lord of Spirits. And do not exert any more efforts as well to try and save them in a way that you think you should save them, because you could end up standing in the way of the judgment of righteousness. And now it is the infliction of punishments to recompense those who are sinful with their own sins going back to them. So be careful of that. And I say this on to the next topic now. I say these reminders about not standing in the way of the judgment of righteousness and its process, because you do have the ability to choose for yourself. That is why you're not easily swayed by certain forces quite easily without your consent about it. And so I am just here trying to send my message and my reminders just as the wind would blow, to try to remind you that ultimately at the end it is all about what you have chosen to do and what you have done, regardless of who might have told you to do so, or might have whispered, or where you may have read it and you thought you were just doing exactly as you were told, but without you thinking that it is just you doing that at the end. You are an individual. Do not insult yourself. There is of course a balance between self-independence and following the collective, following the rules of the community and the laws of the lands. You should be aware exactly of what you're doing for your own self and for what intention. Right now, the most disgusting of all the species are the human species. Be careful of them. If they are righteous, if they completely understand their position, if they are righteous, then they would have let go. They would let go. But what they do instead is they force their presence, their existence, and they continue their crimes secretly. And that is the next topic that I'm going to talk about, because they are parasites. That's in their nature. they will be upset of this truth, because that's what parasites are. When you show the parasites their true nature, they react about it negatively. And they are con artists. Everywhere else, parasites are con artists. They are different from predators that would seek out its prey actively and aggressively, with no apology for its appearance. They do not pretend. They would show their fangs, but the parasites, they would appear to be your friends. And that is also relative and relevant to the trickling of, as it trickles down into my entire creations. They have been added unto my creations as instruments of crime of the fallen angels. And so as they try to settle into my creations, I had to allow balancing of responsibilities where things come from. And that is why in every new human being coming up, they have their powerhouses of their cells, the mitochondria. The mitochondria, each cell has its powerhouse. That's what gives energy to each cell as they convert food to energy. The mitochondria has its own DNA, exclusively only for its simple one, but it is a DNA written by the consciousness of the females. And that is why the DNA of the mitochondria for every child, for every manifestation in flesh, comes from the mother. And that is because they are able to carry the responsibility of mitochondria, because mitochondria used to be parasites at the bacterium level. And they have mastered the things to do to be an effective stealer of energies. And so that is the process that I'm doing right now, in the same way that I have done that during the time of the mitochondria, that instead of them being parasitic, negatively affecting its host or its neighborhood or fellow bacterium, I am cleansing that right now during this time for the spirits. And the reaction always of these kind of beings, the parasites, is they want to muffle and silence the truth about them, because they're scared to be outed and be divulged the truth of what they are. They can't turn around and evade that fact that they must be removed. But that's how they act, because they are parasites. And anyway, so that process includes the conversion process under the Lord of Spirits, Hudson's project, the conversion of the 9 to 10 living spirits. And on to the next topic. These knowledge that I am sharing here right now will be very difficult to understand for those who are not meant to receive it. There is always a segregation by requirements, who can receive certain knowledge or who can digest and absorb certain knowledge. And it is never going to be for the entire populace. Majority of them are being removed because they are parasitic, cancerous to life, both in spirit and in flesh. And we must be careful in how we try to share those knowledge to someone else. During this time especially, we have to be aware. There will be times when it is required. You must do as part of what you must do to share that knowledge with fellow righteous ones. You will be guided by my spirits. And there will be times as well when you will feel, and you must feel, certain necessity to guard and keep that knowledge. You will be guided as well and be told by my Holy Spirit in creations. Only if you walk in the path of righteousness will you know and feel what you must do. And that is because, going back to the previous topic about cancer cells, but this is now on to the next topic as well, it's still relevant about the cancerous beings and spirits. It is because their nature is, the simplest way to explain it, they depend on their host, but they kill their host as well. And that is why they must be removed. They're not supposed to be here, and they are being removed. And on to the next topic. Definitely, this is a different type of communication we're doing, but you may call this particular way of communication esoteric, because only a few whom I have chosen will be able to connect with me and what I say and what we talk about, and only you can connect to me as well and what you want me to talk about. It's a one-way conversation right now, me speaking to you in voice, but in our thoughts and minds we are conversing. It is just like exactly the book of Jeremiah, how some people, they criticize the book as something incoherent. It requires a certain skill, a level up, to understand it completely. And finally, to wrap it all up, I talk about all of this, and without presenting it to anybody other than doing exactly what I must do. But I have given enough chances and kindness to them, even at the expense of my righteous ones, but they chose every single time to be parasitic, cancerous, and impious, and blasphemous, with no respect. They just do not know how to give back in truth and in righteousness. Everything they do is to take, collect, consume, and they corrupt and pollute, just as diseases, but in human raiment. They have really positioned themselves in a spot in our lives where they appear to be very important to us, and they cling on to our emotions. But the key is to be able to unlearn as well, and then learn new things that are settling in.